After my surgery complications, I sent a text saying, "Please, I just need someone to stay with the kids." Hours passed, and the only reply I received was from my sister, who filled the chat with photos from a winery tour. No one showed up. 3 weeks later, still taking pain medication and lying in my hospital bed, I woke up to 68 missed calls and a Venmo request from my mom for $2,600 marked urgent. I felt frustrated. It's unsettling when the people closest to you act like strangers when you genuinely need them. Not just distant or distracted, indifferent to whether you're okay, conscious or struggling. That realization hurt more than the surgery or the recovery. The silence from people who were supposed to care. My name is Jasmine. I'm 35, a mom of 2, living in Chicago. I've always been the reliable one. I paid my sister Jessica's tuition when she was close to dropping out of grad school. I covered the cost of a new furnace for my parents last winter. I helped my younger brother get out of credit card debt twice. No one had to ask repeatedly. I did these things because I believed that's what family meant. You show up. So when I ended up in the ER with severe abdominal pain and doctors told me I needed emergency surgery, my first thought wasn't about myself. I was thinking about Liam and Ava, who are 10 and 6. No one else was home. Their dad hasn't been involved for years. From my hospital bed, hooked up to fluids and monitors, I texted the family group chat. "Please, I just need someone to stay with the kids for a couple of days." I didn't plead. I thought that message would be enough. I was wrong. Jessica replied first, not with words, but with a photo. A boomerang of her at a winery, spinning in a floral dress with a glass of rosé. The caption read, "Week starts now." No call, no follow-up. My parents read the message. I saw the indicators showing they viewed it, but they didn't respond. Nothing. As if I hadn't just told them I was headed into surgery and that their grandchildren were at home alone. I waited for hours, hoping for something, anything. It never came. I woke up after the operation feeling groggy, sore, and still alone. A nurse handed me my phone, and the missed calls weren't from my family. They were from my neighbor, Mrs. Gutierrez. Her voicemail said she found Liam in the hallway, asking if she had milk. That's when I learned my kids had been alone for nearly 2 days. I stared at the wall, unable to process it. Mrs. Gutierrez had contacted the school and then CPS. My cousin Rachel heard about everything and immediately stepped in. She and her husband Evan drove from Aurora, brought clothes and food, and stayed with the kids. They didn't question anything. They just came. Rachel told me Ava had been sleeping on a pile of laundry, and Liam had tried to microwave frozen chicken nuggets without removing the plastic. Evan packed lunches and walked them to school. Rachel helped Ava with homework and braided her hair. I hadn't asked. They simply acted. Meanwhile, Jessica was posting selfies holding oversized wine glasses with hashtags like #blessed and #familytime. My mom liked every post. Not one person from my immediate family checked on the kids. They didn't even acknowledge my message. I stayed in the hospital for another 3 weeks. Recovery was difficult. The medication left me half asleep most days. Rachel and Evan kept everything stable at home. I didn't know how I would have managed without them, and I didn't want to consider the alternative. The turning point came one morning when I woke up, looked at my phone, and saw it. 68 missed calls from my mother and a Venmo request for $2,600. The note simply said, "Tent." No message asking how I was recovering. No question about the kids. just a request for money. That was the moment something shifted in me. There's a particular kind of humiliation in waking up groggy from pain medication in a hospital bed and seeing dozens of missed calls from your mother. Not because she's worried, but because she wants cash. Not a single message asked if I was okay. None asked about Liam or Ava. Just a request labeled urgent. I didn't reply. I stared at the screen, feeling like I was finally seeing the truth I had tried to ignore. To them, I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was the one who paid the bills. My mother called again that afternoon. When I answered, she didn't ask about my surgery or the kids. She immediately launched into why she needed the money. My brother's car had broken down. He couldn't get to class or work. And if I cared about the family, I'd help. I waited for her to acknowledge that she never responded when I asked for someone to watch my kids. I waited for her to ask about my recovery. She didn't. She just kept explaining why they needed me again. I told her no. No explanation, no apology, just the word. She didn't take it well. She said I was becoming selfish, that money had changed me. An accusation that felt unfair, considering I had paid off her mortgage 3 years earlier when they were behind on payments. She hung up before I could say anything else. Less than a day later, Jessica sent me a message on Instagram. No greeting, no concern. She just asked if I was still planning to send money for her boyfriend's birthday trip. I didn't respond. Then she commented on an old post of mine, saying, "Some people forget where they came from." She wrote that while I was still recovering from major surgery. Then my dad texted me. His message was long and indirect, listing every favor they believed they had ever done for me. He claimed I was abandoning the family and ended with a screenshot of a GoFundMe he created for home repairs, suggesting I contribute the way I used to. Meanwhile, I was still on antibiotics, healing from an incision, and trying to manage guilt-heavy messages like they were routine. The only person who seemed to understand was Rachel. When I called her, I didn't even have to explain. She already knew what was happening. She told me Evan had taken time off from work to stay with the kids and was helping Liam catch up on homework. Ava had stopped having nightmares once she realized they weren't leaving. I told Rachel about the calls, the money, and the pressure. All she said was, "Maybe it's time they see what life looks like without you carrying everything." Her words stayed with me because I knew she was right. When I finally returned home from the hospital, the house was cleaner than I remembered. The kids were calm. For the first time in a long time, I felt supported. But I also knew things needed to change. For years, my name had been attached to nearly everything. Family phone plans, shared savings, backup credit cards my sister never stopped using, even the insurance on my parents' house. I'd been paying for a storage unit full of their belongings. The money I gave was treated like an expectation, not something to appreciate. So I began untangling myself from it all. I withdrew from the shared savings account. I canceled the car Jessica used for emergencies. That somehow kept being charged with beauty store purchases. I called the utility company and transferred bills from my parents' house back to them. I stopped paying my brother's tuition and told him it was time to figure things out independently. I didn't give explanations. I didn't justify anything. I just ended each connection quietly. The reaction was immediate. Jessica posted a vague, emotional quote on Facebook about betrayal and being used. My mom sent a group text implying I was punishing them. My dad sent another guilt-heavy message with the GoFundMe link again, as if I had missed it. But this time, their attempts didn't work. I didn't give in. I didn't respond. Protecting my kids and myself came first. And without me supporting everything behind the scenes, the cracks started to show quickly. It had only been a week since I disconnected the accounts. Tuition, credit cards, utilities. I thought they'd try to manage quietly. Instead, things escalated publicly. Jessica went first. She posted a dramatic photo of herself, crying on her bathroom floor, holding a glass of wine. The caption said something like, "Some wounds cut deepest when they come from the people who are supposed to love you. Family isn't always blood." People commented, sympathizing, asking what happened. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. I didn't answer. I watched her page shift between emotional posts and brand promotions. One day she'd write about heartbreak. The next, she was promoting a teeth whitening product. It was clearly performative, and it was working. My mom took another approach. She began calling extended relatives, cousins, aunts, people we saw maybe once a year, telling them I had abandoned the family, let my kids go hungry, and was hoarding money I didn't need. She made it seem like I was punishing everyone over a small procedure. Rachel heard all of it first. Relatives started contacting her, confused. One of our aunts even said she was worried about me and had heard I was unstable and had cut everyone off in anger. I didn't correct any of it. I told Rachel, "Let them talk. I'm done managing everyone's comfort." But things escalated again. Jessica's boyfriend, the same one I never liked, the one who once asked me for $800 for a business idea, showed up at my house without warning. He stood on my doorstep holding a printed sheet of paper and said he was there to collect on past commitments. I told him if he didn't leave, I would call the police. He smirked and told me Jessica would fix this. I texted Jessica immediately. She didn't deny anything. She only said, "I warned you." That message from Jessica confirmed everything. I realized I had spent years believing we were a family that supported one another, when in reality, I had been the only one contributing. The moment I stepped back, the entire dynamic shifted into something unrecognizable. After the confrontation with her boyfriend, I installed a camera at my front door and let Rachel know what happened. She told me to keep records of everything, especially since CPS had recently been involved. I didn't argue. I was already overwhelmed, and the last thing I needed was another unexpected visit. During that same week, my parents continued their silence. No apologies, no acknowledgement of what had happened with the kids, nothing. Instead, I received another group text message from my mom, this time phrased like a warning, saying she hoped I would remember who raised me. I didn't respond. I focused on getting better. The kids were still adjusting, and I wanted to stay present. Liam was struggling with sleep because he worried something would happen again. Ava became clingier than usual. Both kept asking why Grandma and Aunt Jessica hadn't visited. I didn't know how to answer without making things worse, so I told them the simplest truth. Some people need time to understand what matters. A few days later, CPS came for a follow-up visit. It wasn't dramatic. The caseworker just needed to confirm the kids were safe and that the issues they had been notified about, the lack of supervision, were resolved. I explained everything clearly and directly. Rachel had prepared paperwork showing she and Evan had been caring for the kids with my consent. The officer noted the improvements and said they would likely close the case soon. It was unsettling, though. My own family had ignored my messages, And in the end, it was my cousin, someone who didn't rely on me financially, who stepped up without hesitation. As the week went on, I started receiving messages from extended relatives, repeating things my mom had told them, claims that I was unstable, that I had locked the family out of my life for no reason, that I was refusing to help them during a family crisis. The stories varied, but the theme was always the same. Somehow everything was my fault. I felt exhausted, not physically, but mentally. Years of giving, supporting, and trying to keep everyone together had left me drained. This was the first time I truly understood that distance wasn't cruel. It was necessary. Rachel visited one evening while Evan stayed home with the kids. She brought dinner and sat with me at the table, while I tried to sort through mail and medical paperwork. At one point, she said quietly, "You know, taking care of yourself doesn't make you selfish." It was simple, but hearing someone say it out loud made something in me settle. The fallout with my family didn't slow down. My mom sent another long message the next day, saying she had told people I was going through a phase and hoped I'd come to my senses. Jessica posted another emotional quote online. My dad forwarded the GoFundMe link yet again. But then something happened that I didn't expect. Jessica's boyfriend came back. This time he knocked loudly and repeatedly. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the camera, telling him to leave. He held up the same printed paper and said Jessica had proof that I owed them. I told him I wasn't discussing anything at my door and reminded him I would call the police if he didn't leave. He didn't take me seriously until I actually made the call. When the operator answered, he finally backed away, muttering under his breath as he walked off. The officer who came out told me I had handled it correctly and advised me to block him and document future incidents. I took that advice. I blocked both of them, Jessica and her boyfriend, on everything except email, where I could keep a written record if needed. Afterward, something shifted in the house. Even the kids picked up on it. Things felt quieter, calmer, like we finally had room to breathe. It wasn't that the situation was resolved, but for the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was protecting. Not just my bank account or my emotional energy, but the stability of my home. And the truth was becoming clear. My family wasn't angry because I changed. They were angry because I stopped playing the role that benefited them. In the days that followed, the distance between me and my family became more obvious. They continued sending messages that avoided the real issue and instead focused on what they felt I owed them. None of them mentioned the kids being left alone. None acknowledged ignoring my message about needing help during surgery. Every conversation circled back to money. Meanwhile, things at home slowly stabilized. Liam started sleeping through the night again, and Ava became more comfortable knowing Rachel and Evan were around if she needed anything. I spent most of my time resting, attending follow-up appointments, and preparing to return to work. Recovery wasn't easy, but it was manageable, especially with the support I actually had. About a week later, Rachel called me sounding concerned. She said she'd heard through a cousin that my parents were planning to have a family meeting about me without inviting me. Apparently, they were telling people they wanted to intervene because I was isolating myself and refusing to help. Rachel told me not to worry about it, but the idea that they were trying to publicly frame my boundaries as a problem didn't sit well with me. Still, I didn't reach out. I wasn't going to restart a cycle I had finally stepped out of. Then something happened that forced me to take action. I received a letter from the bank about a withdrawal attempt from the shared account I had just closed. Someone, most likely my mom or dad, had tried to access funds that were no longer available. The bank flagged it as suspicious and notified me. It wasn't a huge problem, but it was a reminder that I needed to finish separating my finances completely. That same day, I received a voicemail from my brother. His tone was angry, accusing me of abandoning him and saying he needed me to fix things. He complained about losing access to the tuition payments and blamed me for putting his education at risk. I didn't answer. I didn't call back. I knew if I did, the conversation would turn into another guilt trip. Later that night, Rachel stopped by again. She brought groceries and sat with me while the kids played. I told her about the bank notice and the voicemail. She listened quietly and then said, "You're not cutting them off. You're setting boundaries. They just don't like the difference." Hearing it put that plainly helped more than I expected. Over the next few days, the messages from my parents and siblings became more frequent. Some were angry. Some were passive-aggressive. Some tried to guilt me by bringing up things from years ago. But none included accountability. Not one person said, "We should have helped you when you needed us." It became clear that they had rewritten the situation in their own minds. In their version of events, I suddenly changed for no reason. They ignored the part where I asked for help during a medical emergency and was met with silence. Toward the end of the week, my mom sent a message that stood out. It wasn't dramatic, just short and sharp. "You've made your point. Now stop this and come back to the family." There was no mention of what they had done, no acknowledgement of the consequences of their actions. Just an expectation that I would resume my role the moment they decided the conflict was inconvenient. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on daily routines with the kids. Homework, dinners, school drop-offs. Things felt normal again. Calm, predictable. That alone made me realize how chaotic my life had been before setting boundaries. But the peace didn't last long. One afternoon, I received an email from Jessica. Not a message, not a call, but a formal email. She said she wanted to discuss unresolved financial matters and insisted that I owed her support because she had counted on it. She didn't mention my health, the kids, or anything that had happened. Just money. Attached was a poorly formatted document listing things she believed I was responsible for. Her boyfriend's trip, a credit card payment she assumed I'd cover, and even her share of a family phone bill I had already removed myself from. Before I could even react, a second email came from her boyfriend. It was vague, but had a tone that suggested he believed I was legally obligated to pay them. I forwarded both emails to Rachel, who advised me to keep records and not respond directly. For the first time, I felt less angry and more certain. It was clear that the only reason they were fighting so hard to pull me back was because they wanted the benefits I used to provide. I realized something important. They weren't losing me. They were losing access to what I provided. That's when everything truly clicked into place. That same night, my mom sent another Venmo request, this time for $1,900, labeled "Urgent Medication for Dad." My dad tried calling me, and when I didn't answer, he left a voicemail accusing me of tearing the family apart. But the truth was, the family had never been whole. It only appeared that way because I kept holding everything together. What they didn't expect was that I wasn't dealing with it alone anymore. Rachel and Evan were supporting me. Mrs. Gutierrez had already filed a formal report with CPS about how my kids were left without supervision, and CPS contacted me to follow up, not because I was at fault, but because she clearly stated the issue was neglect on my family's part. CPS closed the case in a few days after confirming everything was fine, but their involvement created a record, and I kept every piece of evidence: receipts, screenshots, messages, voicemails, photos, even the old group chat where they ignored me while I asked someone to stay with Liam and Ava. All of it accumulated slowly, and I knew the moment was coming when staying quiet would no longer protect me. I used to convince myself that silence would keep things calm, that if I ignored the guilt trips and the quiet blame, it would eventually fade. But then Liam's school called. It was his counselor. She said they noticed something concerning during an assignment where the kids were asked to draw their families. Liam's drawing showed Rachel, Evan, Ava, and himself. No one else, not even me. When they asked why I wasn't in the picture, he said, "Mom was sick. Rachel and Evan took care of us." I sat holding the phone, unable to move. He didn't draw his grandparents, his aunt, or his uncle, the people who claimed to care about him the most. I understood why. They weren't there when it mattered. Then the counselor mentioned something else. Anonymous calls had been made to the school, claiming my children had been left alone, accusing me of being an unfit parent, and suggesting someone investigate. The number was private, but the school traced it to a Florida area code, my parents' condo. That was the final line. I didn't hesitate. That night, I wrote everything down in a detailed post. I never used names. I didn't need to. I listed dates, the surgery, the ignored messages, missed calls, the Venmo requests, the pressure, and the rumors. I added screenshots of texts, the group chat where they read my plea and stayed silent, and the $2,600 request I received while lying in a hospital bed. I posted it on Facebook, where every aunt, cousin, in-law, church acquaintance, and old classmate could see it, and it spread quickly. Comments started almost immediately. At first, people expressed sympathy. Then more information surfaced. Extended family, old friends, and neighbors began messaging me with their own experiences, things I never knew. A babysitter from when I was 12 wrote that she once saw my mom threaten to cut off contact with Rachel's family unless they pulled their weight. A cousin shared that he'd been pressured into co-signing a loan for my brother years ago and was still paying it off. But the message that truly changed everything came late that night from Jessica's ex-boyfriend, someone she dated in grad school. I'd only met him once. He said what I was dealing with wasn't new, even for Jessica. He told me she once faked a medical emergency, claimed her appendix burst, collected over $4,000 through a GoFundMe, and took a trip to Cancun with the money. She never had surgery. He had proof: emails, screenshots, and plane tickets. While she told everyone she was quietly recovering at a friend's house, she was actually on the beach. I didn't want to believe it, but it made sense. He offered to send everything, not for revenge, but because he no longer wanted to stay silent. Then something happened that I never expected. My grandmother, my mom's mother, called. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She's 83 and usually avoids family disputes, but she said she saw the post. Her voice shook as she told me she always knew something was wrong, that she noticed how my mother treated me. But she stayed quiet because no one listened when she tried to speak up. Then She apologized. That caught me off guard. In all the years of being shamed, pressured, or manipulated, no one from that generation had ever said, "I'm sorry." Before we ended the call, she said something I'll always remember. "You didn't break the family, Jasmine. You just stopped letting them break you." And it stayed with me. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't distant. I had simply finally said no, and this time, people were actually paying attention. By the next morning, my post had spread throughout our circle. Jessica deleted her Instagram. My mom posted a vague quote about betrayal and forgiveness. My dad acted like he hadn't seen any of it. But the truth was already out. And what came next was something none of them were prepared for. Accountability. I didn't expect everything to unravel so quickly after the post circulated through our small community. I thought it might cause some tension, maybe lead to a few uncomfortable conversations, and then fade. But something shifted. The silence turned into consequences, and not for me. The first major impact was on Jessica. Her small social media business, promoting affiliate links and working with local brands, took a noticeable hit. A boutique skincare company she collaborated with contacted me privately to ask if the story in my post referred to her. I didn't give a direct answer. Instead, I sent them the screenshot of her winery photo that she posted the same day I went into surgery, right under the message where I asked for help with the kids. The company ended their partnership with her by the end of the week. She reacted by posting a series of stories about online bullying and people trying to damage her work, but she never mentioned names. She couldn't name me without confirming what everyone already suspected. Next was my mother. She had always acted behind the scenes, maintaining the family image while managing every detail quietly. But she wasn't as unnoticed as she assumed. Two of her longtime friends from church commented under my post asking if what I wrote was accurate. I didn't reply, but Rachel did. She responded with just 2 sentences. "Every word is true. We have the receipts." After that, my mom attempted to control the situation. She called my grandmother, called Rachel, and called me 5 times in one night, leaving a voicemail each time. Each message grew more frantic. The final one ended with her saying I had burned every bridge and that I couldn't be part of the family unless I fixed what I had broken. That last voicemail played on speaker while I sat with Rachel, Evan, and the kids. No one spoke. There was nothing to add. But the most surprising consequence came in an email I received a few days later from a lawyer. My first reaction was fear, wondering if my family was trying to take legal action against me. But it wasn't that. It was a warning. Years ago, I helped my parents manage a rental property, and they had opened a shared account with my name on it. I had forgotten about it completely. The lawyer explained that my name was still listed on the account, and my parents recently attempted to transfer funds without my authorization. The attempt was flagged because the signature didn't match. He suggested I review the account. When I checked, I discovered they had tried to access nearly $8,000, money I didn't even realize remained in the account. It became clear they weren't only trying to manipulate me emotionally, they were still attempting to take from me financially. I froze for a moment, then felt myself go steady and calm. I moved the funds into a trust that only my kids would be able to access in the future. Then I filed a report, not to start a legal fight, but to protect myself. I closed every remaining financial connection that tied me to them. And with that, the final bridge between us was gone. But this time, I didn't feel upset or overwhelmed. I felt relieved. That night, my cousin texted me. They thought they were untouchable. They forgot you were the one holding everything together. She was right. Without me, they weren't just visible, they were falling apart. Jessica lost all sponsor income. My parents struggled to manage their bills. My brother contacted Evan, not me, asking if he could help him find a job. But I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't celebrating any of it. I just watched it all unfold, finally understanding something I should have learned long ago. Sometimes consequences don't arrive dramatically. Sometimes they arrive quietly, the moment you walk away and take the foundation with you. Within 3 months, everything collapsed. Jessica left her apartment and moved in with a friend after her last brand partnership fell through. She deleted most of her old posts and created a new account, pretending nothing had happened. My mom and dad stopped calling entirely after their lawyer sent them a formal notice about trying to access an account they no longer controlled. My brother never contacted me again. Evan said he accepted a job in another state, far away from the ongoing tension. The calls, messages, pressure, and guilt all ended, not because they reflected on their behavior, but because they no longer had access to me. Once the financial benefit disappeared, their interest did too. And I didn't miss them. What surprised me was how quiet life became. There were no sudden requests, no last-minute financial problems, no expectations disguised as family responsibility. Just a steady sense of peace. Rachel and Evan stayed close. So did my grandmother. We started having Sunday dinners, just us and the kids. Liam began drawing me in his family pictures again. Ava told me she liked how safe our home felt now. That word, safe, meant more to me than any apology I never received. I finally enrolled in an online business course, something I had delayed for years because I was always busy managing everyone else's issues. For the first time in over a decade, I started saving money, and I used part of what remained from the property account to open savings accounts for Liam and Ava. One evening, I took them out for ice cream and told them something I wish someone had told me when I was their age. You are not responsible for someone else's poor choices, not even if they're family. They nodded, maybe not fully understanding yet, but I knew they would someday. I didn't speak negatively about their grandparents or aunt. I simply stopped involving them. I blocked the numbers, removed old photos, and made a new group chat with the people who had stepped up. Rachel, Evan, my grandmother, and Mrs. Gutierrez. They became my core group, my real family. No drama, no expectations, just genuine support. Months later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten message. We didn't know what we had until you were gone. We're sorry. I didn't need to guess who sent it. I folded it and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I no longer needed anything from them. Not their apologies, not their approval, not closure. I already had what I needed. The real lesson wasn't about betrayal or even about consequences. It was about realizing how much of my power I had been giving away for years, all for the sake of maintaining a family image, and how freeing it felt to take that power back. Not loudly or dramatically, but completely.